been a while. It's been, what, almost 2 months since I've made a video on this car. Obviously, that journey was a huge accomplishment. Making it home, I was so dumbfounded that we even made it home. Made it all the way 800 miles from Michigan to here in Pennsylvania. But, and honestly, since the 2 months has passed since I made that last video, I really haven't done much to the car. And that's because there's just so much to do and so much broke on the way here that it's not even funny, and that's what I'm gonna go over now. So as you can see, I started to acquire some parts. I actually met a guy pretty local to me that had a bunch of rabbits when he was about my age, and he just had a bunch of stuff just sitting in his garage. So we have a bunch of like miscellaneous stuff that my car was missing, a new hood because this thing has hood pins, and also when the hood flew up it bent the hinges. As you can see, the hinge is not even attached there anymore, and it needed a new hood, so I can get rid of those finally. I got a new fender because this fender is actually dented in pretty bad right here and also creased down there. I got a GTI front lip. I tried to get a Volkswagen badge here, but it said it was for a Mark 1. I didn't realize when I ordered it that the Westies and the early Mark 1s had different size center badges. At least that's what this was advertised as, so it doesn't fit. So I just zip tied it on there for the meantime. So if you saw the video of me driving this thing back, you'll notice that towards the end, I started to complain about how like the steering wheel was just vibrating really badly. And it was just like, I felt like the whole car was about to fall apart as soon as like I was driving it. It was starting to get super sketch. So I actually started to look into that. And when I started to look into that, I noticed that, well, I actually just noticed that the tire is flat. So it looks like we'll be getting new wheels and tires. But anyway, when I started to dig into that, I thought it had to do something with either the axle or maybe something with the steering rack was falling apart. Like the bushings were just so far gone at that point from driving it for so long. I did this off camera, unfortunately, but when I jacked up the car to check to see if maybe the wheel bearing had gone bad, not even joking, like the wheel was shaking every single direction, up, down, left, right, and it was bad. But come to look at it, I looked at the axle nut and it was just finger tight on there. So that's not good. So I tightened that up, but then after I loosened it, and when I loosened it, it looked like someone had used Teflon tape as Loctite, which, why? So I tightened that up. Both sides of the car had the axle nuts loose. So thank God they didn't fall off. Another thing that I noticed, I've driven this thing twice since I've gotten it back into Pennsylvania. The first time I drove it was before I fixed the axle things, and that's when, after I drove it that time, I was like, okay, like this thing is very bad. Time to just figure that out. Then when I went to go drive it a second time, there's a fuel line down in there. So if you can see that fuel line down there, one of those fuel lines has a fuel leak. And what's right there? The exhaust manifold. So I don't know how long that was leaking for, but yeah. So as soon as that was leaking, I said, oh, we're just gonna put this away and just address that at another time. Which that's okay, because I wanted to fully redo the fueling system anyway. I didn't think I was gonna hate the fuel cell that much, but I absolutely hate it. I'm just gonna put a factory tank in it. I hate that it smells like gas every time that I drive it, and also having the fuel pump inside the car kind of is a little sketchy. I'd rather it just be under the car. So I'm just gonna go back to like the factory style with the factory tank, the factory like inline pump, and then redo like all the fuel lines and stuff like that. But modification wise, this transmission, I'm not sure if it's savable. It's making a lot of noise, but it's chattering really bad. Part of me thinks it's a clutch, because we had to adjust the clutch, I kid you not, 4 or 5 times, this cable clutch system on the way back. So one, I don't like that, so we're gonna go full hydraulic clutch system. And then also either the clutch is bad or just the transmission itself is bad. I still haven't been able to, I've messed with the transmission, I still can't get it into reverse. I don't think it's the linkage, because I've adjusted the linkage. It could possibly be the bushings, but I don't think it is, because I can't even get it into reverse from the actual transmission itself, just from the weight. So part of me thinks that reverse just doesn't work. But also this engine, I was told that it has like 230,000 miles on it. So Come spring, summertime, this engine is going to come out and get fully rebuilt. So I've never rebuilt an engine, so that'll be that'll be interesting to do and learn how to do that. When that's out, all this crap's going to come out of here. Bay is going to get resprayed and redone. This booster doesn't work. It's bad. So I'm going to pull this out, do a full Mark III booster master cylinder. I'm going to do the Mark III front brakes. I'm going to do, which is the 280 millimeter brakes, Mark IV disc rear. But performance-wise, I'm kind of thinking I'm going to keep this thing pretty stock. Driving it back from Michigan, I was pretty satisfied with the power that it had already. It was enough to the point where it was fun to drive, but it wasn't scary, or I didn't feel like the car was going to just be a death trap. So I think if I'm doing anything, I'll do 268 cams and a tune, and I'd be very happy with that. I don't know, somewhere around like the 200 horsepower range would be nice to have out of this thing. It would be nice to have some turbos back there, but looking at how much this thing is going to cost to rebuild, I don't know if I want to necessarily dump all that money into it right away. So interior wise, pretty much the only thing that's going to stay is the dash. So I plan on, obviously I'm going to do a nicer steering wheel. I actually want to switch to a Mark III cluster, just because the Mark 1, this one's a diesel cluster, so I want to have a tachometer, so I need to get a GTI or a cabriolet cluster anyway. And then you still need to do all this, you need to have like the magic black box you get from S&P that allows you to convert the tach signal from a VR6 to a 4-cylinder, which it would just make more sense just to do a Mark III cluster. I'm actually going to just get rid of this entire plastic panel here, and I'm going to just make a sort of like a metal plate, and I'm going to have some gauges, and then a couple of switches, auxiliary switches, just to get rid of like all the like the factory switches. Like there isn't really a place for the factory light switch anymore, so I can just put that up there, or and just like other things that I would want up there. Seats, obviously, I think this is a Mark II seat. There aren't any seat rails for the rear part for the sliders. It's literally just this part, the center cross beam where it mounts at the front. So when I redo the floors, which that's another thing, these floors were made of sheet metal and really poorly done. So what I'm going to do is just cut out both sides, the transmission tunnel or the exhaust tunnel, I guess in this case. I'll leave that, but then I'm just going to replace both sides of the floors with reproduction, but like actual like Mark I floors, not like sheet metal. So these seats are going to go. I want to put in, I actually have my Mark V seats still, so I'm going to put Mark V seats in here, at least temporarily. What else? The fire extinguisher, just in case things caught on fire. Thank God. So another thing is, I want to do a cage, definitely, in this car. I'm just kind of debating on whether I want to do a half cage or a full cage. I have to look. I found a kit for a roll cage. I'm not sure if it's through the dash or if it just kind of like chills right here. Because if the bar sits here, I don't want that. Like, it's just in the way, and I'd rather just not be there. Oh man, I almost forgot. The wiring in this car is a nightmare. So that's another thing. So once the engine gets pulled and everything, I'm gonna strip everything in here. I'm just gonna try to address the wiring and just clean it up a little bit. Get rid of that aftermarket panel, and then just switch to like the factory Mark I fuse block, or just honestly I might even just convert to CE2. So I'm kind of torn on what to do with this car, to be honest. I know going forward in the future with this car, I want to either paint it or wrap it, do some sort of like cosmetic, obviously, to make it look better than it does now. But I'm kind of torn whether I want to do either. Honestly, you guys let me know in the comments what you would rather see, if you would rather see me try to paint it. Obviously, I don't have a paint booth. I've never painted anything before, like professionally, with like a spray gun or anything like that. Never painted a car, so that would be interesting. I've also never wrapped the car either, but I personally feel like wrap would probably be a lot easier to do given the conditions that we have here and that I don't have a paint booth. But I'm honestly open to either. I'm kind of torn also on what color to make it. This is a royal red rabbit. It's a color that I think was only on the rabbits for 1981. I could be wrong about that though. I'm not a super 100% sold on the color. I don't mind it. It's actually grown on me since I bought it. When I first bought the car, I absolutely hated it and knew I was going to change the color, but after driving it and having it for a couple of months, it's grown on me, and I wouldn't mind keeping it. But I've always had the dreams of having a black Mark 1 GTI with red interior, and that side of me hasn't really gone away yet, getting this car. And honestly, the car needs so much work to it, where I wouldn't mind going through all the effort to change the color. And it needs all the work anyway, so it wouldn't be much more difficult to keep the original color than do a full color change. So I'll throw up a couple pictures. I've actually been playing the new Need for Speed game, and I actually built a Mark 1 Rabbit in that. So I'll throw up a couple pictures of the cars that I have. I have 2 of them in there. Both of them, how I would build this car in my like dream world. But let me know what you guys think, which one you prefer, whether I should paint it or wrap it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully, once it gets warmer, it's freezing here in Pennsylvania right now. When it gets warmer, I will continue to make updates on this car, and before you know it, this engine's getting pulled out. So, see you next time.